Hello, fiends, friends, and familiars. This is Matt here from Macabre Daily, and I'm joined today by Brie, who is one of our contributors at Macabre Daily. Hello, Brie.
Hello, how's it going, Matt?
It's going great. In fact, it's going so well because today we're here to talk about something that I know fuck all about, which is Five Nights at Freddy's. And for those that are wondering why we're having this conversation, perhaps we could give a little background here. Bree, you've joined the site to help contribute to some games writing. You're, very much in the world of gaming yourself, having done stints at Game Rant, and also a big fan of horror. So, of course, those two things make perfect sense for Macabre Daily. And as you've been so gracious with being able to contribute some articles up to this point, you let me know you're a huge Five Nights at Freddy's fan, and I thought, well, I know nothing about this, but this is a massive franchise, so this is a chance for me to learn from you what it is I'm missing out in regards to Freddy Fazbear, Fazbear Pizza, the Murray Company. There's layers to this shit, is I think what you're telling me.
You just said Fazbear, so I think we might have to take this back to preschool. It's Freddy
Yes, we might.
Fazbear. We're in Fazbear.
You know what? You know what? Call it out. Call it like you see it. If I and
Yeah.
I don't want the Freddy the FNAFers coming
Yeah,
for me.
you don't want them coming for you, Matt. They're intense. And I mean, I would have to come for you as well. So
Yeah, it's okay. I
yeah.
mean, as long as it's death by pizza, if you can promise me that, then
Unfortunately, deaths in this franchise aren't that nice.
I
So,
figured as
but we'll
much. It
talk
wouldn't
about
be.
that.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get into that. But Bree, I'm going to hand it over the reins over to you to
Mm.
kind of take us through Five Nights at Freddy's 101. And just for those watching, this is going to be a multi-part series. What Bree has put together,
Yeah.
it could possibly be considered the Bible of Five Nights at Freddy's lore. So,
You're
if anyone
welcome.
out there's watching this is think exactly, we should all be thanking Bree for the time and dedication she put into putting this together. So, Bree, I'm here to learn. Tell me about Freddy Fazbear, Murray, all of the things I need to know.
All right. So first, like a little baseline introduction. So we all know, I mean, who hasn't heard of Five Nights at Freddy's at this point? Um,
No one raised their
it
hand
was
behind me,
huge,
so
you know, if you ever go on YouTube, you've seen someone yelling about it. If you've gone to the movies in the last 2 years, you've heard someone reference it, and those references could be good or bad. We'll talk about that. But it's become this huge thing, and it was not this huge thing when I jumped on board when the first one came out. Um, but I was always interested in it because of the first one really felt like some kind of like weird 90s like CD-ROM game. The graphics weren't great, and it was very just like clicking and no animations and stuff. And I fell in love with it because I mean, we're the age of like animatronic stuff. Like I grew up at
yep,
Chuck E. Cheese,
yep.
Rock of Fire Explosion, stuff like that. Like that's ingrained in me. And I was like, oh my gosh, what if it was scary like I thought it was when I was a kid, but in a game where it's actually horrifying. And I grabbed onto that, but since then, it's just exploded.
Yeah,
So
it's a universe now. It's fair to say
it's
that this is
kind
like
of a
it's got
universe. Yeah, it's a universe. It's multimedia. But
yeah, it's
it's
books.
been
Like there's books, there's games, there's
yeah.
movies. Is there like weird lore, like kind of rabbit holes of lore that people go down on like subreddits?
We will talk all about it. Yes, there's something, I mean, there's ephemera kits. Like I got Ticket to Fun, which is something that just came out a couple weeks ago that was like a bunch of just random. It had a brochure and and a badge and a crossword puzzle and a black light, and I defined all the little hints and see how they fed into the story. But that's way past where we're going today. We gotta set the groundwork.
Something to look
But it
forward
has
to.
been, yeah, it has been 11-ish years, a little over. And since then, the series has 15 main games. But like you said, it has a bunch of other stuff. It has like 30 plus books, a bunch of spin-offs. It has a retro like side scroller spin-off called Into the Pit that a wonderful developer out of Pittsburgh, Mega Cat Studios, made, and I was able to review that back then. That was really exciting. But to many outside the fandom, like you, which I'd be very interested to hear this, FNAF has had like a very misleading reputation, right? Because you know, I'm like a diehard FNAF fan, but it burns my soul just a little bit, just this much every time I see like a 5-year-old with a Freddy backpack on. And every time I go to Walmart and there's 900,000 action figures that all the little, like a little 12-year-old's like, can I get this? And then they're crying and stuff, but I could buy it. I'm an adult. I just can't when they're there. Um, but it has this reputation for being like, oh, that's a kid's thing. But it's really not like, sure it is in a way, but it's like, it's very much one of those things where it's like, it's that thing that when you were little, your brother showed you when you were too young. It's that tape you shouldn't have rented at the rental store that the guy behind the counter was like, whatever. And,
The
it's how I saw,
Phantasmagoria, the
yeah,
six CD-ROM set of a, point and click adventure. But also, like, it didn't start that way. I mean, from my memory, because I'm old, old enough to know when this Five Nights at Freddy's first hit the scene, it
yeah,
wasn't necessarily targeted at kids. It just had a very lo-fi interface that made it
yes,
accessible to everybody. So almost like the scary stories to tell in the dark books, they're not
very
really kids'
much.
books, but they are kids' books. And so no matter how old you are, you can still approach it with some level of interest.
Yeah. So it's like many of its fans who are like teenagers, 20s now, were kids watching adults play it on YouTube. Kids weren't playing it on YouTube. Markiplier, young adults all over were exploding because the allure was there. Like I said, 11 years ago, I was in my 20s. But, so I was like, oh, Chuck E. Cheese, oh, Five Nights at Freddy's, this is crazy. Um, but kids watched that like crazy. It was free. Nobody could stop you from clicking on it. Like I said, it's like I vividly remember in sixth grade, like that's how I saw Starship Troopers. Somebody let me get the tape when no one else was watching. Me and my friend Tom watched it in his basement. But it's that kind of thing, and it's that kind of allure to those younger people. But then, they weren't, for some reason, they must not have like looked at any other major franchise. They probably thought adults aren't going to buy toys of this. So they made them for kids. But a lot of people see it as like a jump scare simulator, which is
Mm.
what its reputation was originally. There was the original series of games called the Click Team era, because that's who developed them. And they were developed by Scott Cawthon, but that's the engine and the thing that it was associated with. But the games have like a very deep narrative, like a really deep narrative that a lot of people don't really dive into because it's kind of a lot nowadays. By the time people who watch the old ones caught back up when it exploded like last year, 2 years ago, there's just too much to handle. So that's why
Yeah.
I'm gonna lay it out for you.
You've done the
Um,
work so that we don't have to.
I have across these whole 11 years. I just never stopped and I'm reaping the rewards of it. But like you said, I've written for, random game rant, other things. I've been just like cited all over. Like for some reason, I'm a closet historian of FNAF just spread across the internet.
We need
But
folks like you, Brie, because you're the ones that
so
are keeping the history record straight on what FNAF is about and what it means. Because, as you said, it's not easy for us, the casuals like myself, to just show
yes,
up and like get into it and get the same thing out of it because there is just so much you have
right.
to fully appreciate it. There's so much you have to know and understand. So that's why
Yeah.
I'm excited to hear it from you because not only will it give me something more to kind of sink my teeth into, but you're saving me 11 years worth of time in the
Yeah,
process.
I
So
am.
who can
But
argue with that?
it might feel like 11 years once we get into this.
We'll keep it fun, I'm
So,
sure.
anyway, it has this reputation of being really simple, but the narrative is like this big, deep, dark, complicated thing. Which now that it's hitting the big screen, and we saw with the reception of the original movie, people just weren't like expecting a story-driven movie with only like it puts scares behind its storytelling. It was like very much like we need to build lore, and that's what the series is about now. That's what modern FNAF is. So now's a great time to familiar yourself with it before FNAF 2 comes out in a month, you
Yeah,
know.
when is it? November,
Well, it's December
November,
5th,
December,
but
December 5th.
who knows when this is going up? It's almost November. But anyway, so tracking the story of FNAF is like a big part of the fan experience. Each of the games, the movies, the books, compendiums, because there's compendiums. There's there's the guide, the ultimate guide, the ultimate guide 2.0 is about to come out. Like there's a lot of written material for this. But people love to track it. Uh, so it's hard, and sometimes it gets muddled between these books, between these side games, between these main games. What's canon to FNAF? And what are we going to talk about today while we try to lay down the canon narrative of it? And that is the mainline games. If something from a book shows up in a mainline game, it's canonized. If not, it's parallel. It tells us something, but not an explicit truth. So I've brought together games and books and things that have been canonized for you today. But something that's hard for a lot of people to understand if they've just played the games, because there's a lot of people that have just played the games, is that the games are not explicit narrative games. Five Nights at Freddy's games never tell the most important story while you're playing it. It's never like, you're never the main character. You are is never the main character of the story of that game. I say it's a very like cause and effect type of thing. You're playing the aftermath of an event that's important in each game.
Hmm.
So as we go through the narratives today over the course of this little series, we're going to talk about the event that is important, the story, the real narrative of the Five Nights at Freddy's games we're talking about. But we're also going to kind of say like how we found them while digging through the rubble in each game. All
Yeah,
right.
it'd be
That's
interesting to know
usually,
your process too,
you
especially because I
just need to
think
know the process.
because there's
And I
just I
would,
think so much lore that can, as you're saying, it's not in the game, it's kind of inferred from the game. So keen to
yeah, yeah,
understand, how you arrived at this, but also how folks can pick up on it themselves.
right. And I will preface before we start into the lore. I'm a fan of FNAF. I know other fans of FNAF, and I know a lot of people have different ideas about stuff. This is my idea of it. This is my trying not to theorize as much, laying out of the narrative. So it's not as much wiggle room. It's the essentials. This is FNAF 101, right? This is that class you take as a freshman to get a baseline knowledge. And if you really want to duke it out, you go to FNAF 201, which who knows if that'll be down the line someday, right? And it's always changing. FNAF's always changing. Like I said, 3 days, 4 days, I forget which day it is. Sorry, internet. Before the movie comes out, a new Ultimate Guide comes out. So who knows the day before you see FNAF 2, what new lore will have dropped. And that's just the nature, that's the fun of it all. So bear with me, come along on this journey. We're going to get started, and it's going to be pretty interesting because the story of FNAF stretches back much, much further than its very 80s centric draw, especially because of the newer games. So we have to do like a pretty heavy baseline setting because the lore just changed in a very big way this
Hmm.
year with the release of a game called Five Nights at Freddy's, Secret of the Mimic, which took place in the 70s. But like all good games, told a story that stretches back to the 60s. And it was just the effects of all of these other things we're going to talk about right up front. We're going to talk about it like the story started in the 60s. So
So, and
bear
just
with
for
me.
everyone watching this, we're going
Yeah.
chronologically, right? So that means that
Yes. So
games are
that's
not
where it's
necessarily going to
like,
appear in like the order of release as much as they are the order of chronologically how this would have happened.
true. Yeah. Like a good example is like, I don't know if we're going to get to the original Five Nights at Freddy's today. It's pretty far. It's pretty far down. We're decades before that right now. So we're going to talk about two companies to start out. One that we've been hearing about for a long time, Fazbear Entertainment, and another company called Murray Co., uh, who had another business in the 60s and 70s. So this all comes from Five Nights at Freddy's Secret of the Mimic, which is a story. of a man named Edwin Murray Jr., because we taught his father's rather important and it's going to be hard to differentiate. So I'm going to call them Junior and Senior. Who's an inventor who like revolutionized robotics and animatronic entertainment in the 60s and 70s. He was previously the subject of a short story, already thrown a book in there, called The Mimic, which made big waves. I'm already mentioning it because it is a story that was in a book, like so many others. We had had full book series before The Mimic ever came out. But it's the first big explosion into the canon, and it became like it's now one of the most essential things. That's why we're starting with it. But anyway, the story about the Mimic talked about Edwin Murray a little bit and his family, but his past was never revealed in it. It was like a very small snapshot of something that happened. But in the game, notes, emails, posters, film reels, audio logs, lots of collectibles in these games to fill out your story, have filled in the gaps of the Mimic story. So in or slightly around FNAF fans, giving you the wiggle room, uh, the 1960s, Edwin Murray Sr., another bright mind, founded the Murray Company or Murray Co., which sought to create a variety of entertainment and household products. So it's very much like that cheesy 50s commercial where it's like, get the, Fridge-O-Matic. It's the new hot thing. It's the coldest of cold,
Like Rick
It's very
Moranis in
much
Honey, I Shrunk the Kids kind of thing.
it is, yes. So, later on, he breaks into entertainment, Edwin Sr., and establishes a place called Murray's Costume Manor, or MCM, which is a facility slash workshop through which him and eventually his son, who he raises up in the company, create, store, sell, rent like mascot costumes. So this is where the origins of like mascots in this series come from. Eventually animatronics and then interactive rides and shows for like carnivals or something you'd think of like at Coney Island, right? The 1960s saw this company like explode in the complexity of their creations, like quickly just put them ahead of everyone in the field. Like you don't really, it just, the way it's presented is that this was like a huge step for just this whole field at the time. But in the 1970s, a new company entered the mix.
Ooh.
And yes, one whose creation just completely catalyzes the rest of Five Nights at Freddy's dark narrative and everything that we've ever experienced in the games. So an area of gray here is the origins of this company. Because for a very long time, long before Murray was ever a thing, people have been theorizing and piecing together lore and posters and stuff to figure out the origins of the owners of Fazbear Entertainment. Now, I'm sure you may have heard of one of them. Have you ever heard of anyone in Five Nights at Freddy's? You don't know who anybody's playing. You don't know who is the
Nope.
bad guy in the you never saw the movie.
Nope. Nope.
You
I
don't.
played the first game. That's it. And I didn't even
That's
finish
sick.
it. I played the first game. So that's what I mean. Like I am a green space of ignorance when it comes to this series.
All right. Well, I got you. No worries. That's why we're in kindergarten right now. All right. So according to longtime theories, which were pieced together by posters, text across the whole series, a show called Fredbear's Singin' Show, which is like way beyond, way earlier, the 1960s and stuff, um, featured a real bear performing for people at a restaurant. Right? It's a bear. It has
What
a
could go
hat.
wrong?
They play a record next to it. That's at least what the poster makes it look like. And it inspires a young boy named William Afton. Again, fans, we all know this theory.
I
It's not
know who
mine.
that I
It's
know that
ours.
name. I
Yeah,
know that
that's the
name.
person whose name I was thinking. But it inspires him to pursue show business as an adult. This is a long-held theory. This has been everywhere. We just haven't disproved it yet. Um, he's then believed to open his own restaurant in the 1970s called Fredbear's Family Diner, which featured an animatronic version of this bear, which is called Fredbear, and an original creation he called Bonnie, who was uh, a golden yellow mascot costume of a bunny. Bonnie, like you said, you've played the first one, is the bunny animatronic throughout the series. And he performed alongside Fredbear on stage. And fans have long theorized that at the time, very long, like 10 of the last 11 years, or at least when they introduced him in a book, that a rival named Henry Emily, who was like just a genius in robotics, rose to success through another restaurant. People used to think it was one called Chica's Party World, but people long theorized that he eventually partnered with Afton to do like to bring his business up to speed, to skyrocket it into being the next big thing futuristically. And they established their own company officially, which is Fazbear Entertainment. Um, most of the, most of the time this series has been around, timelines have placed this somewhere in the 1980s because nobody knew this started beyond the 1980s. But now Secret of the Mimic changed all that, like it changed so much. And you can see already how this game is crucially important because it's changing the origins of everything
And
right
it's
out the gate. It already is like, oh, these people show up in a 70s game, and in the 70s they're well established. Um, so it reveals that the Fazbear Entertainment is alive and thriving in the 70s in Secret of the Mimic. What's more, the collectibles in the game reveal a much shadier series of events than fans long theorized, or at least they infer them uh, about how Fazbear initially rose to power. Starting with Emily and Afton commissioning Edwin Murray Jr. To work on their first huge restaurant. So that's how this all gets tied together. We learn through Secret of the Mimic that Edwin, um, prior to the event we're going to explore in Secret of the Mimic, was doing a ton of work for William Afton and Henry Emily, communicating with them constantly via email. And we read the emails through the game. You had an interjection?
well, I think it was more just kind of a question around how much do you think the developers of these games are paying attention to the fan theories? Because it seems like so much of the lore has, I mean, The Secret of the Mimic is an example of a game that just came out, but it's retconning an entire decade's worth of history for the series. So do you get the sense that there's this kind of like awareness that developers have of the fan theories that they're trying to maybe play into, or is this really just like a grander design that none of us are really privy to?
Well, so I know that Scott Cawthon, the actual mind behind all of Five Nights at Freddy's, the person who single-handedly made, I mean, the first four games in like 2 years, just pumping them out, surprising everybody, um, is very aware from day one of the lore. And throughout the series, the side games mostly have poked at that knowledge. There's a game that we're never going to really talk about in here that I personally love a lot. That was completely destroyed when it was released called FNAF World that featured Scott as a character in the game that
Hmm.
like was tortured, but like he's like writing and trying to create the next game and people care a lot. And but yeah, and then the current developer Steel Wolf Studios, I know, they're smart people. I follow them, I watch them, you know I've yet to communicate them with them, but one day perhaps. But no, lore, everybody knows the people's lore, the people's lore as um but I wouldn't say, like, I think retcon is such an interesting word because it feels like a retcon because the community and the fandom is so built on stringing things together. The FNAF community is a giant string board of evidence and trying to put it all together.
It's Charlie Day
So
and, It's Always Sunny,
no,
right?
it's exactly it's it's the thing. But so when something is revealed, it feels like a retcon. You know what I mean? Uh, Because like Afton and Emily, even that, like I'm spelling it out, like, oh, these people everybody knows so well, integral to the books, the main characters of Fazbear were introduced in a book. They weren't in the games before they were in the first book ever released as a little side thing. Called The Silver Eyes, which is a crazy book. I love them. I just reread them with my daughter. We're on the fourth closet, which is the third one right now. Very exciting. But their appearance throughout the timeline, even here, is a result of reveals that come much later in the franchise. Like this is just another one of those things you drag and drop where it's supposed to be because of what we know now. But like William Afton didn't appear until FNAF 5, which is called Sister Location. And Henry Emily first appeared in uh what is it? Pizzeria Simulator. I don't know why I couldn't think of that. Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, which is FNAF 6. But we'll get to those later. It's just like these people didn't have names until the fifth and sixth game in this book. But here we are, like in the 60s. Here's what, in the 70s. That's just how the series works. That's why putting it in chronological order is such a wild concept. But we got to get back on track because we don't need this to be a 100-part series. As much as I'd love that, man. That would be that 201 I
I
talked
believe it.
about. That would be that 201. But so sometime in the early 1970s, Edwin Sr. passes away, and Murray Coe and MCM go to his son, Edwin Jr., which is the main Edwin Murray we ever learn about or hear about, who was working as an engineer at the time. But he created a massive hit for the company, which, like I said, follows that kind of new, like, ooh, household item thing called the Cleanovac. The Cleanovac, a cute little dude who's a vacuum, little robot, who just goes around your house.
Like a
Um,
Roomba.
yes, but much more personality. But he soon meets the love of his life in the factory, Fiona, and the two get married. He asked her to be the voice of a character he was creating in the in the factory. So they fall in love, they get married. Eventually they have a son named David Murray, and the family enjoys like this nice period of calm. But Edwin quickly um, starts to feel the pressure of the Cleanovac. He created like this huge hit in the game. You can go into like the lobby of Murray's Costume Manor, and there's like a huge statue of the Cleanovac with all like the chairs people would wait at, like all around it. But he starts to like really feel the pressure that he'll never ever top this thing he made, the Cleanovac. But he keeps trying and trying and trying. And as he does, and as he grows into a leader, Fiona grows increasingly involved with the business as well, including oversight and kind of helping with Murray's participation in external events, such as a yearly event called theoretically from Fazbear Entertainment called Fall Fest, which sounds simple, sounds nice. It was first revealed in a game called Help Wanted, which we'll get to later. But it's like it's a fall fest, it's a carnival, it's a Halloweeny, autumny thing. Um, at some point while this company is growing and while it's in its time of success, a company called Chica's Restaurants, which you've heard of Chica,
Yeah.
right? um, Commissions Murray's Costume Manor for a mascot for their new location, uh, for their title character, Chica, which Fiona designs, and again brings a lot of positive attention to the company. So, right there, we since you were pointing out retcons, just revealed another major reveal from Secret of the Mimic. What did you notice there? We had a familiar name pop up that you would think would be Fazbear related, but it's what was it?
That was Chica's, right?
Chica. Yeah,
Yeah.
right? Has nothing. Who designed Chica? Fiona Murray from Murray Co. for a company that's not Fazbear Entertainment. So again, this game is telling us like this thing is from outside Fazbear Entertainment. This thing's from outside Fazbear Entertainment. What did they actually do? Where did their start come from if all these familiar names aren't part of Fazbear Entertainment? And that's kind of one of the growing stories in this game. So they create Chica, hugely successful. The restaurant Chica's Party World reaches full conceptual development. They have posters, they have commercials. They actually, kind of like Fazbear eventually does, give Chica her own like cast of like miniature characters that like follow her around. She's on roller skates. It's the 70s. But she has, a bunch of other little animatronic characters. Mr. Cupcake, Miss Shake, Mr. Chicken, and Miss Burger, I think. There's two boys, two girls. But again, they're another character. Mr. Cupcake is one of her sidekicks in Chica's Party World, which she later becomes associated with having in Five Nights at Freddy's. But Edwin gets more and more distracted as time goes on. And as new inventions fail to reach the level of success that the Klanovac did, he starts increasingly being absent. He starts being locked in his office for longer and longer periods of time, ignoring David and Fiona. And while he does this, while he invests so heavily in the next big thing, the next big thing, the next big thing, Murray's costume manners, it's hard to say that, so many possessives. Murray's costume manners, finances start to reverse. They start to spiral more and more into debt. And Fazbear Entertainment steps in to take advantage of this need of Edwin Jr.'s to be successful with the next big thing. So that lays the groundwork kind of Murray Co. And then now we kind of have to, we've brought up here, we're gonna talk about Fazbear a little more, and then we're gonna bring them together, like we learned in Secret of the Mimic. So concurrently
So
with Edwin's rise, yeah, go ahead.
we've just got our foundation of Murray Co.
Yeah,
based off of the junior and the senior, and then Fiona getting involved to then come together. But now we're reaching a point where Murray Co. is in financial dire straits,
right.
and Fazbear Entertainment is rising up to meet this opportunity, which we're going to talk about now. I think.
Yes, yeah. So we had already
Hell yeah.
talked. So concurrently with Edwin's rise, so when the things are going good, that's about the time we think Afton and Emily are developing Fredbear's Family Diner. That's when we think this whole thing is becoming something bigger. Like we said, the title features Fredbear and Bonnie as performing characters, um, with each being a very special type of creation called a spring lock suit. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
No. Okay, so a spring lock suit is this crazy thing, right? And they've long been held as a creation of Henry Emily's, thanks to the silver eyes and just kind of us having never knowing Murray was around. But we think that still holds true despite all the things we learn in Secret of the Mimic. So they are this crazy revolution of costumed characters and animatronics that allow an animatronic character to double as a wearable costume for performers. So, like, this thing can wander around your restaurant, but when it's time for a meet and greet or when it's time for something special, uh, a performer can get inside this, perform, and get out safely. We'll do the air quotes for now.
Yeah, still
Um,
safely is the operative word there.
Safety is the operative word there. Yeah. So it derives its name from a series of spring-powered locks, like locking mechanisms inside, which can be like cranked. You can crank them up. You can crank up each of these spring locks to spread them to the externals of the suit, creating a cavity for a performer. So it kind of just pushes them all up against the walls, um, leaving enough room for people to get inside. However, at this point, the mechanisms are extremely touchy. So the performers can only do basic movements, and this is important, an important distinction because eventually we'll have a time jump. We'll see like the different type of failures and retries that this process have. Should the spring locks recoil into position, anybody inside would be just skewered from every which way
I was gonna say
by
this sounds like a death trap, like a
it
saw trap
is.
at this
It
point.
is essentially a saw trap. So in this early iteration, the suits are not only susceptible to motion, like too much motion, which the game's early games and like references say like even just like if you just wiggle too much for too long, it's gonna skewer you. But it's also susceptible to moisture at this point. So the
And we're like
environment in
90%
which,
water, so that's cool.
yes, so the environment in which someone wears this and how long is like a very big consideration. But the success of Fredbear's Family Diner leads to the conceptualization of their next big restaurant attraction. And Afton and Emily commission um, who we believe because of how they speak, longtime collaborator Edwin Murray Jr. Um, at a time when he has an actual breakthrough in technology that he hasn't necessarily released successfully. Like he has something good, he has something crazy that's going to revolutionize everything, but no one's picking up because the company's going down. Um, Called the MCM, Murray's Custom Manor, Stage Manager. And we see a demonstration of this in Secret of the Mimic. It's an automated um, performance, a full automated performance akin to what we have seen in reality of Chuck E. Cheese, stuff like that, but on a humongous scale. A demonstration program of this reveals a host of original Murray's Costume Manor characters, including Roxy the Wolf and Foxy the Pirate, who, again, you are probably familiar with
I'm
as
not.
it's an original, it's an all-timer.
Yeah.
It's a first game animatronic, the red fox that pops out of the curtains and runs down the hallway. But again, a day one FNAF animatronics origins again placed right here at Murray's Costume Manor with no official word if it was a collaboration or not. It is presented fully as an original character alongside Roxy the Wolf, which is a character that doesn't show up again until like deep into the 2000s in the timeline in a game called Security Breach, which came out for us on the PS5, if you want to know just how recently this is. But again,
Huh.
1970s, these things are in Murray's Costume Manor. But 1975, boom, right dead center in the middle of the 70s, sees Murray-Co. and Chica's Party World crash with Chica's Party World's assets, which were created by Murray's Custom Manor, seemingly returned to physically the factory Murray's Custom Manor, which you can find in the game in a room. Um, but hope soon arrives for the struggling Edwin Murray Jr. when Fazbear Entertainment Inc. tasks this company with modernizing everything they're doing, modernizing their animatronics and creating a show program for their new restaurant, putting it all together. And you see in the emails and in the communications that it's very much like a predator prey relationship. Like they're speaking to this guy like, this will save you, this will be great, but there's also a clear distinction between how William Afton talks to Edwin Murray and how Murray refers to Henry Emily, which again has people kind of wondering, like, we don't know how Henry Emily is associated with this because he also very clearly knows what's happening in their dynamic. But the way, even in audio logs, like Murray never refers to stuff about William Afton talking. And in the emails, even Afton's just like WA. He signs things off little. But then Murray's referring to Henry Emily as like Hen, and they have like short names. And they're, he talks about him like they were friends, like they know each other. So people are still trying to figure out that dynamic. But regardless, Fazbear Entertainment is out to destroy Murray's costume manor. And we don't know necessarily why yet in this point in history. Um,
And just
so
as a
Edwin,
quick reference check, though, all of this information that when you talk about emails and audio logs, like to give folks some perspective on how you're getting this. So much of this is
yeah,
required through completion, right? Like you like getting
yeah,
100% of these games and stuff. So your dedication to exploring this lore isn't just,
right.
a byproduct of your interest. It's also because you've dedicated the time to go and platinum these games, and get as much out of them as you possibly can.
Aside from things I've referenced, us physically seeing all of this history, every email, all the audio is not part of the narrative of this game. It is extra. It could be missed. But I platinum everything I play, so I can't miss anything. It is a compulsion. No, it's not. It's not fun. You should see me with a Final Fantasy game. It's sad.
I was gonna
But
say
anyways, yeah,
some
yeah.
action RPG out there, open world, you'd be
Right, yeah.
lost for
I had
years.
quite the time on Elden Ring Night Rain because
Oh
I had
my
to
God.
depend on other people to get those trophies, and that is unhealthy for me. But back to Freddy's. So Edwin gets to work on various animatronic advancements, and Fiona starts designing new concepts for characters. Additionally, Edwin, while building these new characters, has a breakthrough in Springlock technology, um, producing at least five safe iterations of Springlock suit characters. So he has this new version that's safer, and he successfully makes at least five of them, including one called the Pirate Captain, um, a version like a prototype of Fredbear, another one, Spring Bonnie, so like a new suit for Bonnie, or we don't know. This could be the original, just fixed. It's in Murray's costume manor though. Monty the alligator, which is a character we only see this prototype of, but is a character eventually seen in Freddy's games. And what is the what's the dog's name? Bub something. Some dog, which is kind of an inside joke because people long held that there was a dog animatronic. It was like an internet myth,
Like
that
the
there was a
Sinbad
dog,
thing.
Sparky. Yeah. So, but there's a dog in it. But all but the pirate captain, which is a character you find like in a different room, of the thing, are assumed to be meant for this original new restaurant, which is going to be Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, which is the name that should ring bells because that's what everything starts becoming, and that's their big explosion. These new seats are water and fall resistant, and they replace the hand crank mechanics with an automated button. So you push a button, the thing opens up, everything retracts, and you step inside, and water and fall damage, which again, it's not very gamey, but that's just how I say things. They're more sturdy.
It makes
Uh,
sense. No, it makes sense. I
yes,
think in terms of what we're talking about here, like we've already established that moisture was a huge flaw, so that
yeah,
fixes
for
that
sure.
problem.
Yeah,
the,
big
the, the
time.
finickiness of the crank itself can somehow like make it so that it's probably hard to fit. So we're making advancements here, along with
Big
the stage
time.
manager, which is allowing to automate so much of this as well. So I'm seeing it come together. Now we have the culmination into Fazbear's Pizza, which is, as you say, the kind of
Yeah,
the staple, a staple of the game
that's what
and
the,
and lore.
that's the iconic is on my mug.
And no
But
one's going to
anyway,
question your
that's
fandom
the
because you've
place I
got it.
went to. That's the place I went to on Halloween Horror Nights. But sometime later, Fazbear suddenly just sideswipes Murray with a huge shift in direction. Just over email. Nope. Change everything, right? Much to the detriment of their finances again, because they've invested
Right.
heavily in this new thing. Requiring Edwin to abandon Fiona's designs for all the animatronics for newer, less cartoony concepts, which Murray himself finds scarier than
Hmm.
what they were thinking. These new characters include revamps of Fazbear's Freddy and Bonnie, a new version of Chica, and a much larger version of Murray's costume manners, Foxy the Pirate, because Foxy in um, the stage manager show that we see is like this big. He's like on a little stick, like the things in the Goofy movie, like the little like they're like little. You could see the stick,
Never seen the
and
Goofy movie. I know. I know.
wow. Is this going to become a bigger series? It might. All right.
I
That's not,
have so much to
the only
learn.
thing that's scary about this is that you haven't seen it. Unfortunately, that movie's a delight. But anyways, one day Fiona leaves unexpectedly, and we learn via email that she's gone to oversee details on the latest Fall Fest, leaving David with a sitter. We read this email. And then it's revealed through various collectibles that a fire breaks out at this event and she dies.
Oh no.
Yes. Which further spirals Edwin's decline in every area.
As it
It's
should,
at,
as it would. He's got a failing business and he's now got a dead wife.
right. She's just not holding back. Poor Edwin. Not just like he's got all this. He sucks for this reason.
Yeah.
But anyway, Fazbear very purposefully begins to overwhelm a mourning Edwin with redesigns on everything. Uh, at the same time, they start poaching his employees, which we learn about via email between employees, leading Edwin to go bankrupt. He stops paying back his debts. He stops doing this. He's like at the end. Eventually, Afton buys out the entire operation, including the land that Edwin's house and this factory are built on. But we'll get to that later. That's just catching us up. We got to talk about something um, that Afton and Emily weren't aware of until they started communicating with these employees. That was gonna be an enormous jump in technology that Edwin had been working on, but reluctant to show because of his attachment to it. And that is something called the Mimic One endoskeleton. You've never heard of it. It's fine. Um,
Nope.
sometime before, during, in the area of 1978. So this is 3 years into the decline. Murray starts looking at the things that failed and kind of starting to get an idea based off of the key advancement he tried to instill in each one. He created a bunch of things. Each of them tried something new and usually failed because of it. They were overcomplicated. The Cleanovac was such a revolutionary thing that he's trying to now create the Stay Up Latte, which is a coffee maker that learns to anticipate your order through machine learning in the
That's a great name,
70s.
by the way.
Yeah, the Stay Up Latte. It's
Yeah.
amazing. You can watch a commercial for it if you Google Steel Wool Studios
Oh, we're
YouTube.
going to be linking to that commercial in
Yeah.
here so
Oh,
folks can
good.
get really immersed in this lore.
They make fake trailers for all these things. Um, so it learns your coffee order. It learns to anticipate your choices. Weird. Murray's magic coat rack, which can adjust to any size. It could be little, it could be huge, depending on who needs it. Anyone can reach, essentially, if they need to hang up their coat because this thing changes sizes. Um, And then probably the most troubling thing he makes, just because of its market, is the mycelium men, which are like cute little mushroom guys, that mimic songs they hear and voices. They're supposed to mimic songs, but the voices thing's kind of where they mess up. Uh, you read people returning them and being creeped out by them because it starts speaking in their child's voice, and it's Furby. If Furby just tried to be your child when they're asleep. You
That's
know what I
fucking
mean?
terrifying.
Yeah, yeah. It's not saying nonsense. It's not doing that like that weird laugh that haunts me to this day, you know?
Even the weird laugh is, I mean, the second that anything that is inanimate starts to not only feel animate, but also starts to talk like people, I'm
Yeah,
out.
I don't
I'm
like
out.
it.
That's where I'm out.
But anyway, so the culmination of these various robots programs, the things he programmed them with, gives rise to the Mimic One or M1 program. So Edwin creates um, M1 and installs it into an endoskeleton, creating a babysitter for David following his wife's death because he's still so buried that he's like his priorities are, they've been wrong for a long time, and mornings, grieving isn't helping him adjust. So he creates a babysitter, right?
I've got no time to parent. I might as well just let this robot do it for me.
Yeah, he wasn't parenting before, and he's not going to start now that every time he sees David, he's reminded of Fiona. But one night, okay, and this is a hot topic right now. I'll do it with grace. Edwin seemingly hears Fiona's voice over the radio. He seemingly hears it through the speakers in the factory. He tracks its source to this underground area that he was using as an endoskeleton workshop, right? And it's unclear, which is how you say violently debated in the FNAF community,
Like the
whether this
fisticuffs we're talking about, where people like
this
I
is
will fight
like,
you over these
yeah,
things.
yeah. Um, it's unclear whether this was the Mimic program repeating Fiona's previously recorded dialogue because she voices Mrs. Helpful, a little thing that like employees can use to get updates on information throughout the factory, or just because the mimic was being created while she was, probably still alive. He
Is it the
had,
mycelium men? Are they the ones behind this?
it could be. They might be behind it all. Who knows? That could
I
be
mean, I don't. That's why I
whatever
don't
this,
trust mushrooms. We just
whenever
eat
there's a
them.
DLC, the whole thing could just be the mycelium men. But what freaks him out is that um, what other people think, what he believes, or seemingly starts to believe, is that Fiona's spirit is possessing this endoskeleton, which is a event that FNAF fans are very used to being a central mechanic of how we think in this world, because the games are rife with that. Um, but they present it very differently in Secret of the Mimic. Uh, as weird as it is on how like FNAF doesn't explicitly tell us things, they do explicitly say in like FNAF 1 and stuff through what they reveal eventually in the whole movie that like possession's huge in this. But it's unclear here because we're dealing with something that mimics people, which one it is. And it's important that they don't reveal that because it's incredibly important for how the mimic starts to affect the whole canon. Is you don't know if it's been possessed forthright or if it's mimicking all the time.
Love a good red
But
herring.
yes, but M1 rapidly what skews to the side of possession is that M1 doesn't just start sounding like Fiona, it starts acting like her. It mimics beyond what it could have seen. Um, because the mimic, you know, learns by seeing, learns by hearing, and one placed in this endoskeleton, it wouldn't have been seeing Fiona. So it starts taking on her mannerisms, and Edwin Murray Jr. grows very attached to it. And we're laying this out like it's just some fun fact, like, oh, this happened and this happened and this happened. But the way it's revealed in the game is horrifying, which is that you're watching home movies out of order on David's birthdays. And there's like
It's
really
clever.
sad ones and there's really positive ones. But in one, the last one, you see um, Edwin's talking to Fiona and they're decorating the room. All the decorations are up. He says, wow, this looks amazing. He's gonna love this. Look at this room. He's out, David's not there, which you should be worried about forthright because, but that's no, Edwin's not worried about that. He's never there.
Yeah.
But he's how's the cake coming? And it's very much from the like old camcorder style, found footage for this community. And he pans to the left and there's a robot holding the birthday cake. And the birthday's like, I baked it myself. He's gonna love it. And it's jaw dropping because you don't understand how ingrained this thing got with Edwin until you see that he's living like this thing is Fiona.
Well, if he's treating the endoskeleton like Fiona in this circumstance, I'd hate to think what he's doing when they're in the bed. If he brings this thing to the bedroom, I'm just going to leave that
Oh,
there.
we're not doing that. There might be
No, we're
kids
not going
that
to go
watch
crass,
this.
but
Yes.
um, but Edwin, I'm sure got lonely, and
Listen, he doesn't have time for that frivolity. He needs to create the
yeah.
next big thing. But um, this relationship obviously grows extremely toxic with him essentially overcoming it, like partially or mostly internalizing his grief because of a replacement, which he then gives the same role once he gets comfortable, uh, where M1 watches David while he works. And this time, the thing doesn't care. Like, you know what I mean? He's just work, 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 work. Unfortunately, this culminates in a horrific event on David's fifth birthday, which is the birthday we saw them make the cake for. Um, and we are now in December. We don't know where we are because we don't know exactly when this kid is born. But 78, 79,
I
we're
was going to
like,
say late 70s. This feels like where we are.
we're either like December 78 or we're in 1979. But a new topic of discussion, which should kind of tell you where we're going a little bit. The M2 animatronic. We're taking a brief pause on talking about Secret of the Mimic because this is what happens here is the topic of that story I referenced earlier called The Mimic, which appeared in a book called Tales from the Pizzaplex #6. Uh, there was a phase in Five Nights at Freddy's books where they started releasing volumes of short stories. Um, and some of them were like, they're crazy, to be honest. There's a first series called
Like crazy
Fazbear,
good.
but every version of crazy. Some are crazy good, some are crazy. And then some are like, like, ooh, that's horrifyingly crazy. Um, but very much presented and accepted by the community as things that are not canon. But
So these books, these stories are not by many considered to be part of the broader lore, like more like fan fiction.
so they have a relationship like the games do to the canon, where the games explore the aftermath of a story, and it's up to us to piece together the story. These short stories um, are accepted and kind of posited as parallels to truths.
Okay.
It is the on-screen dramatization of a real event.
So the Unsolved Mysteries
It
version of
is, yes, it's the Unsolved Mysteries. The names have been changed, the events slightly
To Protect the
altered.
Innocent. Got to.
Yes, but somewhere in there is something extremely important, whether it's like a person, place, or thing, or the narrative of that story. And some of them are nuts. There's one about like sea monkey things that are like fat. Like we've yet to find out how that affects the overall lore. I don't think it does. But then there's also one where, oh God, what's it even called? The breaking wheel or something. That's like one of the most horrific little things I've ever read. It's horrifically violent and gruesome, and it's tucked in this cute little Freddy book. But again, it's very indicative of what this series and franchise is, which is like it's extremely dark when it wants to be, but usually it just wants to infer its darkness. But when it doesn't, it's crazy.
It sounds like it
But the
rewards people from digging deeper, right? It's
yes,
like
always. Yeah.
if you're go if like, and I think that's maybe the natural dividing line between age groups is like, and I don't want to throw children under the bus so much as to say like
Wow.
there's a certain level of depth that they're going to go to most of the time, and it's not as deep as maybe an adult would. And so I
Mhm.
think the level of patience someone has to go further into the rabbit hole is going to be entirely dependent on how old they are, how much time they have to
Yeah.
spend on it. So I think, yeah, it makes sense that it would reward you for having the curiosity to go a little bit further into and it
Yes.
sounds like the prerequisite for these stories is just that they take place in or around like Fazbear Pizza. Like that the
Right.
only prerequisite they have to meet.
So this one, oddly enough, is from the second full second like series. So we had a full series called Fazbear Frights that ended sometime later. Another series of short story volumes called Tales from the Pizzaplex was released, which um, the name Tales from the Pizzaplex it refers to a restaurant that's way later in the timeline, deep in the 2000s, like the 2020s, 2030s. But this one story does not.
Hmm.
And it's called The Mimic. That's all it's called. This is before we knew anything. Um, and it comes from the sixth volume of this book or this series, Tales from the Pizza Box, just smack dab in the middle. Up to this point, the FNAF book series, like I said, were thought to portray just parallel things. But this is really the big shakeup for the canon, where something from the book didn't just quite literally occur in the canon, but it was perhaps the biggest thing that ever happened to it. Like we
Hmm.
said, we have this whole game now, Secret of the Mimic, that is shaking everything to the ground. Um, so Five Nights at Freddy's Secret of the Mimic builds on this story. These are two parts of a whole. On David's fifth birthday, right? Like we were referring to, we saw it in the game. Edwin and M1 work together to prepare the festivities, make the cake, the big reveal. I made it myself. Edwin records it, resulting in a film strip that we can find in his house in the game. And while they prepare, they leave David to play on a playground, like a swings, slide, home, backyard playground. But it's built on the grounds of the factory in its yard, which is, I assume, hopefully at the time empty other than that. But at the end
One
of
would
the
hope.
video, yeah, at the end of the video, Edwin sends M1 to fetch David to bring him in for the party, right? While he applies the final touches, leading M1 to discover, or I'll shout out, I'll give highlights to some lesser, not lesser, but a less popular theory, enact, possibly enact. Some people think this was something M1 did on purpose, but the book doesn't spell it out like that. Because M1's not in the book. So again, we're already putting it together. Um, an incident in which David is struck by a vehicle while chasing his ball across the yard, the
Damn, Pet
factory
Cemetery
yard.
style.
Yeah. Following the incident, uh, again, we're combining these things. So the story of the mimic is like that happens, he creates another one, and then it starts mimicking his son, and he gets upset. But Secret of the Mimic expanded all that. So now after the incident, we know M1 starts pressuring Edwin to create another animatronic. And not from the vantage of like, it worked with me, it'll work with David. Like, not like that. From the vantage point of M1, which has become Fiona, is mourning David and wants her son back. That's the dynamic that's been created. She's not just being like, it'll work again, though she does say that in an audio log. But we learn it's like, it's from that motherly thing. Because her need for this creates the aftermath we experience in Secret of the Mimic. So she argues that the process worked before, and doing so will make his family complete again. It's
So at
very
this
like,
point,
which
David's the only one, sorry, Edwin
Edwin,
Jr. is the only one who's still alive from the family.
yes, yes. Eventually, this pressure becomes more personal as Fiona, like I said, yearns to reconnect with David and parent him even without Edwin there. Like Fiona's not, which I'll get to later because I'm referring to it as Fiona, but there is like a distinction in how the names are written. Um, just wants David back, isn't saying like, I want everyone back. I want David and then you to stop working. Fiona just wants David back. M1 just wants David. So sometime later, an employee spying for William Afton reveals M2 to William Afton, and Edwin finds out about it while he's working on it. So he goes through with it. He starts making the M2 animatronic. It's mimicking his son. Again, question of possession or mimicry, but eventually his grief and all this pressure finally buckles because, he's been just business, business, business. There's a new Fiona, but he is struggling with the new David. So he freaks out one day when M2 is mimicking David. And this is in the story and in the game, leading him to freak out. He just mercilessly beats this new mimic, this M2 animatronic, like crushing it, like destroys. If it had legs, he destroys it, but the book makes it sound like it never had legs, but the game made it sound like it did. Like whatever it is, it ends up without legs, destroyed, seemingly beyond repair. Um, and Edwin's grief just continues to spiral, and he's done with this whole thing. He places the M1 program that was in the animatronic into a new device, which is referred to throughout the series as the MXES. That's just what we're going to call it. It stands for something highly technical that's also completely fictitious. It's the Mechanical X-Form Experimental Storage Unit, MXES, which he calls F10-N4, Fiona.
There we
Okay.
go.
Okay. And that's the distinction when you have like audio and stuff between the two. And places it in a basement level of the factory that's research and development. He just places it in this back hidden area that only he knows about. Uh, and we'll find out why only he really knows about it. But M2 survives this beatdown, and as a mimic, as it's programmed to do, starts mimicking Edwin's violent outburst.
Oh
Um,
shit.
yes, which M1, who's now plugged into the whole system of the factory, can see through its cameras and through all of its technology. Um, and M1 starts pleading with Edwin to get this thing under control. It eventually sends him blueprints for something called the Cradle, which would provide boundaries to what M2 can do and keep everyone safe from how violent it's being. But M2 over recovers. It doesn't just continue working, it improves itself and builds itself new legs before uh, laying trigger and triggering a trap for Edwin in Edwin's office that causes like a huge explosion. And it's honestly like one of how it's spelled out in the game is one of my favorite video game things that I've ever experienced because it's after the fact. You've played this game. We'll talk about the story of the game in a second, but your character discover is going this whole game trying to get to Murray's office with the preface that he might be alive. And when you open the door, you see a little bit of ground, a desk, and then outside, there's no wall because there was a huge explosion, and there's a little cleanovac sweeping dust in the corner. Um, and you find an audio log, you can click it and hear it. And it's the greatest, it's honestly like one of the coldest things I've ever heard in my life. No, it really is. It's amazing. But anyways, so it builds itself new legs, triggers this explosion, and Edwin in this recording, you hear Edwin's voice being like, I have some new ideas for the Cleanovac, and I just tested it, unfortunately, there was a huge explosion, blah, 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 is talking this stuff. And it's the mimic. It's M2 mimicking Edwin. And then you hear in the background the real Edwin yelling for help. So you hear Edwin calls to M2, M2, help, I'm crushed, I'm dying. And the animatronic plays back sound bites from the home movies where Edwin ignores David. So Edwin's in the back,
Oh,
oh, help, I'm dying. And Edwin goes, not now, buddy. Daddy's working. Like it's like the coldest shit I've
damn.
ever heard. And I was like, where is this coming from?
That's
This
pretty
robot.
gangster.
No, it's like one of the greatest things. Maybe next time, maybe next week. Like, and it's things you've heard before and it's crazy, but I love it. But he the animatronic plays sound bites where Edwin ignored David's attempts to spend time with him throughout the game, like audio logs and throughout the videos and stuff. And then Edwin's missing from all outside the factory. So with him missing and Fazbear having heard of this animatronic, and also having a bunch of assets stored and like new developments, new technologies that this guy just made and has never put into practice in this factory. They send a technician into the factory to recover a lost asset, they say, which is to capture M2. Uh, they do this over and over again. They send full teams of technicians, engineers, stuff, and each team is horrifically murdered and stuffed
Wow.
into the costumes throughout the factory because it's full of these
Oh,
costumes from when it started. There's
that's
clowns,
dark as
jesters,
shit.
dogs. Yeah, again, this is Five Nights at Freddy's, but you wouldn't know. Uh, and that leads directly into Secret of the Mimic. All right, so Secret of the Mimic is you play as a character named Arnold, right? Actually, I'm going to preface this for a second because since this is the newest game, uh, its canonicity, like it reveals a lot of stuff throughout that you can find and it would never change no matter how you played it. But all Five Nights at Freddy's games have various endings.
Mm.
Um, and more times than not, every ending is important in some way, but one is the real one. So, like, if I got the bad ending, something in there was important. It might feed you a little new info you didn't know about something else, but it's not what happens in the story. And
So it
since,
rewards you to essentially play it through again to get those different
yeah,
tidbits.
and those will show up like as we go through the games because now we're finally, I don't know if you realized it, but we just reached our first game.
Yeah, I was gonna
And
say, I mean,
yeah,
we've hit all the context leading up to the first game, so
yeah.
I feel like
But that's very
we're
indicative of this franchise where it's like, what I just told you was collectibles. What I just told you was short stories that became canon. None of that is something you play.
which is wild. And I think like
Yeah.
because as I'm thinking, as we kind of preface this before, like this is a multi-part thing. And so I feel like
Yes.
where we're heading now is like almost like a perfect point to say, like, hey, let's park it and start with the first game on the next round of these
You think
because
so?
I
You want
do
to cap
because
off the mimic?
I feel like we get into this first game because I there's a lot to take in. Like there's just so much about
Hey,
Edward
whatever.
Jr. and Sr. You have Henry, you have Afton, you have all of them kind of coming together now at this eventual point because we're seeing the downfalls of the Murrays, Edward Murrays, right? That's the last name is Murray.
Yes.
Yeah, you see the downfall of the Murrays, the rise of the Aftons and the Emilys, but also taking advantage of the technology. So I don't know. This is I knew going into this that I was going to learn new things.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was going to be as exciting about these things. Like to me, this is just like, I don't know. There's a lot of obvious care that's been put into this world to create this lore. And the fact that you've been able to articulate this so well, not to speak to your ability to deliver information, but also just how kind of fully realized this world and these characters and these things are. So
Yeah.
Brie, I'm very much looking forward to our next round of this
Do you
because
have
I
any
feel like
clarification questions?
um, I don't yet, but I think that's again
Okay.
because I'm still processing a lot of what I've
Yeah.
taken in.
You
And I
can we
also
can
feel like
start the next one with clarifications.
oh, we're gonna do like the HBO recap, it's gonna be like a
Oh
5 minutes
yeah.
of like here's what you missed in the first 101 session.
Okay.
Um, but I can't wait for folks to see this. And be on the lookout because we're going to do another one of these. Hopefully, we can do these once a week for the next foreseeable future until we finish this
Yeah,
series.
yeah.
But also leading up into the Five Nights at Freddy's 2 um, release in December 5th. So hopefully, I think maybe that's our goal. By December 5th, we have explored the lore up to that point, and then everyone can go into the sequel of the film completely aware and dialed in as to what everything FNAF's about.
Yeah. Because you never know what they're gonna put in the next one. The movies
I
already were sprinkling some crazy stuff in there.
mean, it's wild to me that they're bringing out an ultimate guide days before
Yeah.
the movie's release, which could potentially
That should
upend.
be your hint. That should be your hint that there's gonna be more than just like FNAF 2 stuff in it. They want you
Oh,
to know more than FNAF 2's game.
based on what you've told me up to this point, I'm convinced that there's way more to
Could be
this than
anything.
most people know. Like most people will never pick up on many of these things. So I feel
Yeah.
fortunate that I have your expertise to help guide me through this journey. Bree, we'll make sure to put your socials and link to your stuff in the notes for this. And I cannot wait for the second version of this. But in the meantime, check out Macabre Dailies. You can get more news and information about games, movies, all that good stuff. We don't need to puff chest and market too much on this thing. But is there anything you want to give a shout out to, Bree, before we close out this first episode of
No, just
FNAF 101?
shout out to Macabre Daily for even like letting me do this.
Are you
Yeah.
kidding? It's awesome. This is awesome. And again, I feel
I
like
mean,
there's
5 years ago, for like you know what I mean. FNAF has long been that thing where I'm like, I like love FNAF. Like I'm embarrassed because everybody else is like, oh, that game that the kids have on their backpacks. But yeah, it's crazy we're even doing this to me.
there are adults older than us that are out there that
Yeah,
have full rooms full of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle toys. So like,
yeah,
there's no such thing as being a kid anymore as an adult. Like you can just like
it's
what you
true.
like and
It's true.
just love it wholeheartedly. So, and that's how we show up. So Bree, I can't wait for the next one. Looking forward to it. And between now and then, I'm gonna be making sure I stay away from anything that mimics my wife's
Oh,
voice, my voice. I just don't can't have that
it's a good
business in my house.
idea. Yeah. Well, you
All
have a
right,
good
Bree.
one.
Thanks, Bree. Talk to you the next one.
All right, see ya.